This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome once again from Johannesburg here in South Africa. I'm Evan Jansen. The show is always live. It's broadcast from our studios here in Auckland Park. We're also streaming live on YouTube right now, where the whole show is always available on demand on our YouTube channel. Today, we take a look inside the refugee camps that was set up after the wave of xenophobic violence in South Africa last month. Then, only 18 people are shot and killed in South Africa every day now. Believe it or not, that number is down from 34 previously. There are also 46,000 millionaires in South Africa. That's according to the latest wealth report. What do you think about that? At SABC Newsroom is where you can send us a tweet. We also look at the latest wildlife app. In our book slot, we have Hazel Friedman's shocking book, Dead Cows and Piranhas. That should be an interesting chat. And we'll close the show today with top band Muffins. We'll be in studio for a chat a little bit later. But first, let's get the day's news from Newsroom.
Good morning, I'm Anindor Mal. Let's have a look at the stories making headlines today. COSATU says it will discuss the new e-toll dispensation at its Central Executive Committee meeting next week. Yesterday, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa announced a reduction of up to 50% in fees. Ramaphosa also said that the e-tolling system would be linked to car license renewals. While the Workers' Union and other civil action groups have been vocal in calling for the scrapping of the system, the Gauteng office of the Premier says it has listened to motorists' concerns around e-tolls.
We believe that this dispensation does address quite adequately the issues and the concerns that were raised by the people of Gauteng, which were expressed through the panel's report.
The bail application of Christopher Panayiotou resumes in the Port Elizabeth Magistrates Court this morning. Panayiotou is accused of masterminding the abduction and murder of his wife, Jade. His bail application was rolled over to today as his legal representative, Advocate Terry Price, was not present yesterday. Judgment in the murder trial of Reiger Park toddler Cuban van Wyk is to be handed down this morning. Nathaniel Mpoku has been charged with the kidnapping and murder of the 3-year-old and will appear in the High Court sitting at the Palm Ridge Magistrates Court in Ekurhuleni. The toddler's body was found on a mine dump in August last year. ANC stalwart Ruth Mompati will be remembered in the Northwest today. This as an official memorial service will be held in Vryburg in honor of Mompati. The 89-year-old Mompati died on the 12th of this month in Cape Town at a military hospital. She will be laid to rest on Saturday during a special official funeral where President Jacob Zuma will deliver the eulogy. SAFA President Danny Jordaan will be sworn in as councillor of the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro during a special council meeting tomorrow. He jetted into Port Elizabeth last night following the ANC's announcement that he would be the ruling party's mayoral candidate for the metro. And President Jacob Zuma has apologized for the recent xenophobic attacks on foreign nationals by South Africans. He was speaking during a state visit to Mozambique.
I thought it is just important for us to apologize on behalf of a small minority of South Africans who undertook that wrong kind of thing. We have been together for centuries, not even decades, Mozambicans and South Africans, Malawians, Zimbabweans in particular. Many of them are citizens in our country, and there's never been a problem.
Well, remember, you can find all of those stories on our Newsroom Facebook page. Just search for Newsroom. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom.
My name is Elvira Munezero. I'm from Burundi. I'm a refugee here from 2004. I came in South Africa after the killing and the insecurity in Burundi. My first bad experience, I had it in 2008 with the xenophobia. I started to be a nurse because my father was killed in Burundi. And when he was shot, he called for help and no one was there. We didn't know basic care that we could have done to save him. Then I said to myself, I will do nursing so that I can save somebody's life because I saw my father dying. I still remember the day. It was on the 21st of October 2000. He was shot inside our house and we couldn't even... Yeah. So I started to be a nurse to save life. I started here in South Africa at the University of KwaZulu-Natal in Durban. I work on Addington Hospital and I'm working at St. Mary's Hospital in Pentown, Mariannhill. All my work, everyone is coming. Burundian, South African, or Nigerian, everyone, they come to it. Yeah, and I treat them all together. But sometimes when we treat them, they say, "You can't quit it. Why you don't come and help me?" And you're giving care to somebody that even does not even consider you. Here in the camp, there was a lady who was pregnant and she was about to deliver. The policemen that were guarding us, they refused to help us till the lady delivered on the gate to the hospital. The mother still had the cord inside, the placenta, and somebody was carrying the baby without any glove. The nurses, they said, put the mother on the bed. They didn't even come and they cut the cord. The mother was bleeding. She could have died. God loves refugees. I believe it's because Jesus also was a refugee. For me, I don't think that I'm a Burundian or South African. I'm a human being, a creation of God. So I cannot separate myself from a South African and I Burundian. The same blood is flowing in us, and we are unique. No one is able to give life or to take it away from somebody. So we are the same.
That was one of the hashtag Solidarity for Survival videos that form part of a series of videos Doctors Without Borders have started releasing. These are testimonies from refugees and migrants displaced by April's wave of xenophobic violence in Durban who stayed at displacement camps in Chatsworth and Nisipingo. The stories expose the harsh reality of life as a refugee in South Africa. Xenophobia has led to healthcare exclusion, they say, a denial of protection and unpredictable violence from friends and neighbours. Now, to tell us a little bit more about this and about the Solidarity for Survival initiative, we are joined from Cape Town by MSF Medical Coordinator for South Africa, Dr. Gilles von Kutzem. A very good morning to you, Doctor. Thank you once again for joining us.
Good morning, Eben. Thank you for inviting me to this show once again.
We've seen one of the testimonies live on air just now. This is only one of those personal stories that you guys are putting out. What were some of the other stories that stood out for you while you guys were busy with this program?
I mean, as you say, it's a series of videos. You can watch them on News 24 or on the MSF website. And each of them shows a very strong, very emotional sense of humanity from people living in the camps who describe how traumatic xenophobia was for them in 2015, but also in 2008, and also of everyday events throughout their life, so not just these two events. And so the reason why MSF is releasing these videos is to prevent further xenophobia, to prevent that I have to stand here again in a couple of years because there's new attacks again. It is to show the human face of foreigners living in South Africa, to show the impact of everyday xenophobia and the impact of the xenophobic events.
Doctor, just give us an account of the circumstances that, that refugees have been living under in these camps.
Well, so you know, there were about 7,000 displaced at the end of March, beginning of April. They were hosted in 5 camps, and then you had massive repatriation. By, more than 3,000 Malawians went back to Malawi, several hundreds of Mozambicans and Zimbabweans, and now we are down to 1 camp where you have about 520 mostly refugees and asylum seekers from Burundi and the Democratic Republic of Congo. And these people can't go back anywhere because they have fled violence in their own country, the very traumatic journey, and now they fear to go back in their communities in Durban because they're still very, very scared to go back in communities where reintegration remains relatively difficult. So these people are stuck between a rock and a hard place and are severely traumatized, the majority of them. Reintegration efforts by the government, with some support from the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, are ongoing but relatively slow, and so people are still in that camp in a very vulnerable situation.
This reintegration process, what are the options for these people? How will their lives proceed, or how would you like their lives to proceed from here on?
So ideally, I would like for community efforts, dialogues to lead towards a situation where people can return into the communities where they come from safely. And that will take a lot of work because some refugees told me we've tried to go back to our community, and then people told us if you come back, we'll go after you. So there is a lot more work to do for that to happen. If people can't go back into their own community, then there are other options. You can try integration into another community in Durban or into another province. And for a minority of people, you will need resettlement in another country because they are not safe anywhere in South Africa. But the majority, and what I would like to happen, is for xenophobic sentiment to decrease in South Africa, for increased tolerance, increased humanity, so that these people can go, live safely where they were living before.
Doctor, we've run out of time. Thank you very much for joining us. That's the medical coordinator for South Africa of Médecins Sans Frontières. If you want to see some of those other videos about how these people's lives have been affected, you can watch them all over the web. You can also go to MSF's website. We are Africa. We need to find it in our hearts to live together. Now, something that's at the opposite end of the scale. 18 people are shot and killed in South Africa every day. That's according to the latest data by Gun Free South Africa. It is a significant drop from the 34 people a day in the year 2000, before the Firearms Control Act of that year was implemented. According to the 2009 mortuary report, homicide incidences have dropped from 44% in 2005 to 38.5% in 2009. This study also revealed that young men between the ages of 15 and 29 years are the most vulnerable to being murdered. Gun ownership in South Africa again came to light last year following the death of Bafana Bafana captain Senzo Myiwa, with the cabinet approving amendments to firearm control legislation in a bid to clamp down the spread of firearms in the country. However, more still needs to be done to make South Africa much safer. Now, today we're joined by Gun Free South Africa, Adele Kirsten, who is the Director of Advocacy and Lobbying. A very good morning to you, Adele. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Eben. Thank you for having us.
The numbers the numbers I've just looked at, on face value, it's still scary, but it seems there's a big improvement.
Well, and that's the good news. And one of the other things that the data shows is when you look at other weapons that are used in crime and what we call in injury-related incidents like knives or blunt instruments, you don't see the same reduction. So as a researcher or a scientist, the question you have to then ask yourself is what happened over this period from 1999 to 2009? What change happened to cause this fairly dramatic reduction? We're talking almost 50% reduction in gun deaths in South Africa over a 10-year period. And the single most important intervention was the introduction of stronger gun laws.
Where do all the other guns still come from? It seems as we have amnesties, we get people that hand in weapons and so forth, but it seems as if we still have a lot of unlicensed firearms in our communities. Where do they come from and how do we deal with that?
Okay. Loss and theft, I think, is one of the biggest contributors to the movement of illegal guns. And the research shows that there really are three main sources. The one is cross-border trade. But evidence seems to suggest that that's decreased significantly in the last 20 years. Certainly was prominent in the sort of political transition years. Loss and theft, the biggest contributor to illegal guns is loss and theft from police, from civilians, and from your private security industry. And so that's where one of the problems lie. But I think what's really important for people to understand is that most illegal guns were legal at some point. So again, strategies that have shown to work both here and elsewhere in the world, you have to mop up the illegal pool. You have to get rid of them. They're out there, you can't control them, and in fact you don't know how many there are. But the other is you have to ask the question, where are they coming from? And that's where you have to control. So you have to decrease the opportunity for movement from the legal pool into the illegal pool. And our amendments to our existing act, which is going to come before Parliament in the next couple of months, is trying to do exactly that. And one of the suggested amendments is to mark weapons.
Just tell us a little bit more about these amendments that are going before Parliament to the firearm control legislation.
Okay, there are lots of amendments. I'm just going to concentrate on what Gun Free South Africa sees as some of the key ones. The one, and I think perhaps the most significant, is an acknowledgement that SAPS has to get their own house in order. So you're seeing a whole slew of amendments which really increase accountability mechanisms and control mechanisms over SAPS stocks. So just to give you one example, one of the amendments is that the National Commissioner is required to report quarterly to the Minister of Police on loss and theft of police guns. So much tighter control. Also, the designated firearms officer, the suggestion is that at every police station you have a DFO. Other amendments are limiting access to semi-automatics. So, for example, dedicated sport shooters, limiting that to 2. That's good because we know access to guns, it's not just about crime, it's about risk to people in the home, and it increases risk for loss and theft.
Well, I thank you for joining us. The numbers certainly look a little bit better, and if it is the legal framework that's helping us, then we should certainly push for that. Thank you for joining us today. That's Adele Kirsten, who's the Director of Advocacy and Lobbying for Gun Free South Africa. Yeah. Let's just take a quick look at your reaction to the latest announcement on e-tolls. Now, we are all involved in this thing. Please remember to send us your views at SABC Newsroom. Myself, I have my own views because I got an exorbitant bill that I'm not very happy about because I don't use the highway. Anyhow, let's have a look at what some of you think at home about the latest pronouncements on e-tolls. George M. says, e-tolls, I wonder if COT and COJ cars have e-tags. I'm sure they do, George. Nkenke Kekana says, the new e-tolls dispensation is a real gain for heavy Gauteng road users. E-tags are no longer compulsory. Non-possession is decriminalized. There you. Frank says, stop e-tolls. So where's the incentive to those who've been paying through e-tags? Exactly the same cost, but they've had to pay up front. Sober thought there from Frank T. Now, today's picture of the day comes from Savage Nation, captioned, "Train collision outside King Williamstown, South Africa." Yes, that was the Shropshire Laws Mail yesterday that ran into another train just outside of King Williamstown. 2 lives were lost in that incident. Let's now take a look at the front pages from around the world. What is happening elsewhere? In Europe, the Times reports that fears that the Islamic State has sent fighters to Europe posing as migrants were growing last night after a terrorist suspect was smuggled across the Mediterranean to Italy. In Nigeria, the Vanguard says 2 cousins of President Goodluck Jonathan, Patience Egbeni and Kate Eni, have been abducted by gunmen at a local government area of Bayelsa State. And in the US, the Wall Street Journal reports that Osama bin Laden's Pakistan compound yielded evidence of the banal bureaucracy of terror, his abiding obsession with conspiracy theories, and his hands-on leadership of Al-Qaeda in the weeks before the 2011 US commando raid that killed him. Quick look at what's happening around the country. Here in South Africa today, we start in Johannesburg, where judgment of the man accused of killing Rachel Park, toddler Cuban from Wyk, will be handed down in the Johannesburg High Court, sitting in Palm Ridge, of course. Then in Port Elizabeth, the Magistrates Court there, the state is expected to put forward its case as to why Christopher Panayotu should not be granted bail. And then in Kimberley, the final arguments in the case against the ANC's John Block and Albain Burtis are expected to continue. The 2 accused, together with Trifecta Director, will hear by tomorrow if they are found guilty of fraud and corruption. And we'll give you an update from courtside there with Ulrich Hendricks tomorrow. Time for us to take a short break. You're watching Newsroom here on SABC News. Welcome back. This is Newsroom. Now, believe it or not, there are more than 46,000 millionaires living in South Africa with a combined wealth of $184 billion US. This is according to the latest South African wealth report released by the global research consultancy New World Wealth. Millionaires, or high net worth individuals, refer to people with net assets of $1 million US or more. Most millionaires live in Johannesburg, while Durban is producing millionaires at a faster rate than the country's average millionaire growth rate. The study also reveals that Indians earning this amount far exceeded those of black people here in South Africa. To unpack the report, we are joined by the head of New World Wealth, Andrew Amoyles. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
It's a mouthful there in the report. 46,000 millionaires in South Africa. That sounds like a big number.
It is big, especially compared to the rest of Africa. The next highest is Egypt, which has just over 20,000, and Nigeria has about 15,000. So we're a long way ahead of any of the other countries.
How do you qualify for this? You talk about $1 million US net worth.
Yes.
How do you guys calculate this? What's the methodology? Put it that way.
Well, essentially, we include net assets, so assets less liabilities. The one asset we exclude is primary residences, which is just a general trend that people don't include that because it's something you have to have. But we include all the other assets. And essentially, we have a database of high net worth individuals. We don't have all 47,000 of them. But using income distribution stats, we're essentially able to fill in the blanks and work out the number of millionaires and the number of people with over $100,000 US, the number of people with over $1 million US, the number of people with over 5 million, etc.
Well, I can't tell you, Andrew, I'm not one of the 46,000, unfortunately, in your report. Let's talk about something I think that South Africa is facing a little bit, and that's the gap between those very rich and the poor. What does your report say about that, or don't you guys even look at that?
We do look at that. We look a lot at, we don't only look at millionaires, so we look a lot at global wealth trends, so the wealth of the average person in each country. And the average South African is worth $11,000 US, or they have wealth of $11,000 US, which is not actually terrible compared to some other countries. The worldwide average is 27,000, so we're below the worldwide average. And there's places like Australia that are above 200,000.
Wow.
But that's per person, $200,000 US per person on average. But at the same time, there's places like Mozambique where the average person is worth about $400 US.
Yeah.
So we're worth 11,000, so we're way ahead of them.
Yeah, we're way ahead of the curve. The study also talks about racial dynamics and certain races doing better than others. Tell us a little bit about that and also why.
Well, essentially, it's difficult for us to say why, but certainly the Indian community has performed well since 2000. The African community has also performed well, but not to the same extent. And the white community has also performed well since 2000, but not so well over the last few years, where there seems to be a bit of a drop. But essentially, since 2000, the number of high net worths in South Africa has gone up by 135%. But since 2007, it's only gone up by 9% because of, the depreciation of the rand essentially has held that back.
Finally, how do this group of people, how do they make a contribution to the economy? How do they spend their money?
Oh, well, obviously they drive the economy. Most entrepreneurs that are successful are millionaires, and most CEOs. So essentially they are the decision makers that decide on policy. And some of the interesting things that they're spending their money on recently are super luxury watches, brands like Breguet, Petit Philippe that weren't available in South Africa a few years ago, are quite popular. Also, rare wild animals like roan antelope have become quite a collector's item for wealthy people. And art, obviously, is always a big one.
Very interesting indeed. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for joining us, sharing with us, well, the South African Wealth Report. There are 46,000 millionaires living in South Africa. I bet you didn't know that. Next, have a look at some of those people living in your community. They might be doing better than what you think. Let's take a quick look at what you're talking about now on the social pages. Of course, it's a living thing, social media, and it changes. Busy, Sizwe says, busy giving away planes and free caller tunes instead of bumping the cheese up for the workers. Sips T, talking about the MTN strike. Yeah, there's a lot of unhappy people about that. Sitle says, I'm with the workers on this one. I'm not using any MTN services until MTN realizes employees' demands and does away with brokers, says Sitle. Breezy from Sikoi says, apparently that woman who always tells me to recharge my account before attempting any further calls will be on strike. Yes, that's a funny look at the MTN strike. But let's take a look at what's happening on Newsroom's Facebook page. This morning, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa announced, is that a tweet of the day? Gauteng motorists would in future have to pay their e-tolls before renewing their car license discs. What if they've got your bill wrong, I asked Mr. Ramaphosa. What do we do then? Then, an official memorial service will be held in Vryburg in the northwest today in honor of ANC stalwart Ruth Mompati. The 89-year-old Mompati died on the 12th of May in Cape Town, and then the Pan-African Parliament has expressed concern about the impact of illicit financial outflows in Africa on development and economic recovery. For more news updates, you can go to our Facebook page. You can also visit sabc.co.za/news for all the latest. Now it's time to take a look at that tweet of the day. Well, today's one comes from Simdembile, saying that MTN must compensate its workers. They won't achieve growth with disgruntled workers. Pay them reasonable salaries. Common sense there, a lot of common sense from Sintembile there. Yes, that's what everybody wants in the end. You're watching Newsroom. We'll be back with you after a short little break.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Let's take a look at the stories making headlines today. COSATU says it will discuss the new e-toll dispensation at its Central Executive Committee meeting next week. Yesterday, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa announced a reduction of up to 50% in fees. Ramaphosa also said that the e-tolling system would be linked to car license renewals. The bail application of Christopher Panayiotou resumes in the Port Elizabeth Magistrates Court this morning. Panayiotou is accused of masterminding the abduction and murder of his wife, Jade. His bail application was rolled over to today as his legal representative, Advocate Terry Price, was not present. And ANC stalwart Ruth Mompati will be remembered in the Northwest today. This as an official memorial service will be held in Vryburg in honor of Mompati. She will be laid to rest on Saturday during an official funeral where President Jacob Zuma will deliver the eulogy. Well, remember, you can find all of those stories on our Newsroom Facebook page. Just search for Newsroom.
Yeah,
you can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Given, back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Anine. Now, Samir Randere-Ries, presenter of the world's longest-running environmental show, 50/50, has recently come up with a new way to experience the world of Africa's magnificent creatures, along with things like safety advice on how to keep both you and Africa's wildlife safe. His Whispers of the Wild mobile application allows your smartphone or tablet to become a portal into the world of nature's stories. Now, to tell us a little bit more, Samir is with us here in studio today. It's quite a treat. Nice to have you with us.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Tell us firstly a little bit about yourself. I know it's a fantastic app and we'll get there, but you worked as a game ranger, you've got a master's in conservation, various institutions.
So,
interesting.
Yeah, wildlife and nature is my passion, and it's something that kind of grew on me through the years of my education. So I started at UCT, started doing environmental science, and then I did my game ranger course, and that's when I really kind of developed this deep appreciation of and intimate understanding of nature, where I could just walk through the bush and see things and know what was going on. And from there, I went and I did my master's in conservation ecology, and now my passion is conservation, first of all, and trying to make the world a better place for wildlife and nature, and secondly, to convey some of my passion to the broader public.
Tell us about the app, because we also want to have a look at the app. If you guys can put it up, it's really interesting. The process, how did you go about it?
So the app, how I came up with the idea was I would get quite frustrated when I went on safari, because I would go driving around game reserves, and if I was doing a self-drive safari, I would always kind of be frustrated that the information was not readily accessible. You know, we'd see an animal, and then because I had the personal interest in it, I would go back and I would read about those animals. But for the rest of my family, they would never learn until they went on a guided game drive, you know, when they had a game ranger with them.
Yeah.
But I don't know, what frustrated me or what I realized was that when I was in the car with them and I actually had the knowledge, I would actually give them information, and they would say, you know, it makes such a difference having you in the car. And then when I was in Europe, I went to a historical site and I got one of those handheld audio guides. And that completely transformed the experience, because suddenly what just like an inanimate object or a wall suddenly had a whole history and a story. And I realized that this was something that could be very powerful to apply to wildlife. And that's where I started.
What I also like is the safety aspect of it, because, you know, here in South Africa, we see lots of incidents of tourists jumping out of cars when their lines are about and the like. And it sort of helps with the common sense of it also, I would think.
Of course. I mean, you'd think that it's common sense, but a lot of people don't know what to do. And the thing is, you see these videos of people kind of trying to push elephants off the road or leaning out of their cars to take photos of lions. And the thing is, that often leads to unfortunate incidents, and that obviously can lead to injury for the people, but usually it leads to the animal having to be put down too, and that's really sad. So that's what I'm trying to prevent.
And downloading the app and getting it, just tell us before we wrap up, how can people get this app and what the sort of processes are?
Okay, so the app is available on Android and iOS. There's a light version of the app, which only gives you 10 animals, and that's free. But if you want to upgrade and get the full 50 animals and the game, which is great for kids and to get them kind of interested and engaged with the wildlife, you can pay to download the premium app.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us. I think it's something that's going to add a lot to the experience for everybody. We live in this age of technology where you can almost get it done yourself. Nice idea. Well done.
Thank you very much.
That is Samir Danderaris. You can catch him on one of our shows, actually, 50/50. It is the longest-running environmental show in the world, they say. I'm not 100% sure of that, but it sounds nice anyhow. Thanks for joining us once again. Now, some serious business. After being sent on assignment to Thailand to document the increasing number of South Africans convicted as drug mules, Special Assignment Senior Producer, well, she made a horrifying discovery in her book, Dead Cows for Piranhas. She takes us on an intense journey of the brutal underworld of the South African and transnational drug trade. Through her encounters with prisoners, Hazel Friedman found that many drug mules are in fact victims of human trafficking, disposable items used in a profit-driven industry. Well, Hazel's going to join us now from Cape Town. She's a multi-award-winning journalist and a senior producer of SABC3's Special Assignment. Good morning, Hazel. Thank you for joining us.
Hi there, Eben. It's good to be on with you.
Thailand, it's one of many places known for human and drug trafficking. Why did you decide to start investigating there? How did this all come about?
You know, the beginnings were quite innocuous. I was contacted by the sister of a man who'd been convicted of drug trafficking in 1994. And I went to Thailand intending to interview him and some of the other South Africans. There were 12 there at the time, basically just to do a human interest story, to find out how they were doing and also to interact with their families back home. And it was there that obviously, as you explained, the story took a very sinister twist, because I met a young woman who I discovered, in fact, had not been sent to Thailand voluntarily, but in fact had been coerced or tricked into becoming what we call a dead cow or a decoy. Her sole purpose was to be arrested so that professional mules carrying much larger quantities of drugs could slip through customs undetected. And it was through her story that I embarked on an investigation and realized that, as you said, some of those convicted of drug smuggling should in fact be reclassified as victims of human trafficking, because they fit the criteria identified by the International Organization for Migration for victims of human trafficking, namely coercion or trickery, transportation and exploitation.
Now Hazel, the title of the book is a little bit scary, you know, it's quite a gruesome picture. Why did you decide to sort of go that route? Is it a sort of a grab you kind of title?
It is, but it's also the most appropriate title to explain, to kind of encapsulate and embody the brutality of this world. Because in the world of transnational drug trafficking, the drug mules or decoys occupy the lowest rung on the ladder. And they are basically identified in terms of two components. They're either assets or liabilities. They're either beasts of burden, in other words, they carry those drugs willingly, or they are bait. They are sacrificed for the sake of raising the statistics But meanwhile, their arrests do not make even the slightest dent in this transnational drug trade. So obviously the title with its image of carcasses being ripped apart by predators is pretty brutal, but that's the nature of this, the underbelly of this trade.
Now, Hazel, tell us about your personal account here, because I know it's also a deeply personal story. You tried to get recruited as a drug mule within the whole thing, which was also then filmed on hidden camera. Why are you taking this kind of risks at your age, Hazel, if I may ask?
Eben, you know, as a seasoned brain sniffer yourself, these are just the tools of the trade.
Yeah.
But, okay, I took some calculated and some uncalculated risks, but it was for hopefully, I won't say higher purpose, but it was ultimately a quest for justice. It wasn't just about me being a journalist and going and nailing somebody and then kind of moving on to other subject matter. It did become much more deeply personal for me, because I started understanding also not only the anguish of those incarcerated abroad, but the anguish of their families at home. And also this led to me looking at why South Africa doesn't have a prisoner transfer agreement with countries where South Africans are incarcerated, not only for drug smuggling, but for other crimes, and not to condone crimes that are committed by South Africans in other countries, not at all, but to at least extend a humanitarian gesture to them and to their families, to allow them to spend a portion of their sentences back home near their loved ones. I mean, we have about 10,000 foreigners in this country incarcerated, either on remand or convicted. It costs the South African taxpayer over 300 Rand a day for their upkeep. So even financially, it would make sense to have a prisoner transfer agreement between South Africa and SADC countries and countries overseas where South Africans are incarcerated. So.
Hazel, give us the human face of this story, because I'm sure that you've come across some heartbreaking scenarios. What were some of the things that really stood out for you when you put it all together?
You know, as I said, it's also first of all meeting the South Africans behind bars, and they hold on to the hope not of an early release, but of the chance to come back and spend a portion of their sentences with their families. And they hold on to this hope like gossamer thread. And they have they're not trying to avoid responsibility for their crimes, even though, as I said, I believe some of them are more victims of human trafficking than perpetrators of drug trafficking. But to actually visit them, and I visited Thando Pendu, who formed the fulcrum of this book, and also Nolubabalo Nobanda, also known as Babsi. She was the young woman who was found with cocaine in her dreadlocks, and I also believe that she was a victim of human trafficking. And she's also just made the most of her time in prison. She's studying, she's become an inspiration to other South Africans incarcerated alongside her, and she's resilient, she holds out hope. I went there in November with her mom and with the mom of Thando to visit them in prison, and they are extraordinary. We went to encourage them, but we left there feeling encouraged by their strength and their belief that someday they would be released, or at least be allowed to come home and serve their sentence close to their loved ones.
Now, Hazel, this is a story that continues around the world, it seems, unabated and on the increase. There are reports that people in Nepal are now also at risk for this kind of thing. Will we be seeing you traveling elsewhere and picking up the baton and running with this?
Okay, well, let's put it this way. I'm not going back to Thailand anytime soon. But there is Indonesia, there is Nepal. So, yeah, chances are I'll be going definitely to Africa, because an increasing number of South Africans are incarcerated there. So.
Well, Hazel, fantastic. It's a great book.
I'll keep you posted.
I'm sure I will be. I'll be following you on Twitter then, Hazel. Okay. That's one of the very best journalists in our country, Hazel Friedman. She's done a fantastic book, Dead Cows for Piranhas. You should go out and have a look at it. Really, really interesting. But now, time for us to almost wrap it up. Yeah? It's been 2 years since the Muffins broke on the music scene here in South Africa with the album Have You Heard?, earning them several awards and having been played on international stages. The all-male five-man band. The musical is so soulful, so accessible, and it appeals to all age groups, races, classes, and sexes. Today, the five, Ty Keke, Tom Zustins, and Scabs, join us here in studio. Hello. There's one short.
Yeah.
Where's the fifth guy?
It's getting cold, so obviously.
Oh, he had a sleep in, man. See how that's how it happens if you write things the day before, you know what I mean? So, but tell us, guys, you've been low profiling it the last year or so. What's happening? Are you guys enjoying it out of the limelight? Are you stepping back in now after the new album?
It's been quite a lot of work, you know, trying to get the first album onto the scene. So I think after that we decided just to chill and make sure that we take time to create our second album. Because in the first one there was a lot of pressure, you know. Yeah. The second one we just wanted to make sure that it's something that we wanted to put out there, like exactly the way we wanted it. So I think that's why we've been, you know, keeping it low for a while. But we're back, yeah.
Tell us about the second album, because, you know, it's easy to break out and be the next big thing. But following that up with all the pressure of expectation, how do you guys deal with that?
Well, I guess with the first album, right, we were very young, trying to explore everything, and sort of coming into ourselves. Yeah, and with this album, it's titled "Do What You Love," and that's exactly what we did. We followed our own advice, and we're doing what we love. You know, even the sound and the different sounds that have been captured in the album. Yeah. Are sounds that some of them did not exist in the first album. You know. And in terms of pressure and all these things, of course the pressure exists sometimes, but it's how you deal with it, and it's how you sort of want to handle the things that are thrown at you, I guess. And so we've got a very sort of great support base. There's 5 of us, you know, all males, and a lot of ego, but a lot of love as well.
We need man love, man. The world needs man love, you know. We need to share the love.
I guess the world needs a lot of more men to express more of their feelings. Yes. So I guess
it's something that I'm in therapy for right at this very moment. So good, well spotted. Do what you love, and you never would have worked a day in your life. Is that the premise?
Yeah, I mean, look, we don't want to discourage people from, you know,
from working,
from leaving their jobs. You know, it would be sad. But I mean, at least, you know, in whatever you're doing, at least love what you do. That's basically the message we're trying to bring across with the new album. You know, just bring about change. You know, think about things differently. Don't only follow money, and don't let everything be about money. Let it be about passion and emotion.
I love you, man.
And things good, you know.
I love you. I love your work. I love your work. I love it. I love the way that you guys are thinking. There's more to life than one dimension. We have to find each other in a way. Yeah? We have to unite. Yeah, we have to connect. That's the point, I think, of especially where we are in South Africa now. There are lots of forces at play that maybe divide us. We need to find a way to come a little bit closer together and understand our role in the world. Am I right?
That's very true. I mean, there's a song that we wrote, it's called Africa. We are honoring our continent as we are one people. Yeah. You know, so we wrote it because we understood, like, death happens to everyone. It's not only to South Africans or to. Yeah. So we all feel emotions as human beings. So we pay tribute to Mother Africa as our home, as a people, you know. It's great.
Without Africa, we are empty. We are nothing.
The world is empty.
Yeah. You know, it's a concept that I think that sometimes we tend to live past a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah. We seem to forget, you know. I guess we, as Africans, we've got such an inferiority complex, you know, that we don't understand how rich and how such a complex people we are, you know, and how much the world actually needs Africa.
They're all coming here. They're all traveling here for the acre of Africa, as Nelson Mandela called it.
This is the place. This is the place.
There must be something happening here that is right. I mean, this is our century. The Muffins. I like the name, man.
The Muffins. Well,
how did you come about that? It's got nothing to do with cookies that you eat. It's got more to do with the boys, or
it has a bit. It has something to do with that, just a little bit. It was a joke, actually, came from him. Like, it's called the muffin joke. You can look it up on the internet. It's so lame, but he thought it was funny. So people just started calling us muffins, man.
This guy.
Wow. Guys, you guys rock, man. You guys got a great vibe. You got a great sound. It speaks to all of us. I love your work. I love what you're doing. Let's go out with something off the new album. This is Newsroom. We love it in the morning.
Word. Muffins in the morning.